Alright, so today we're going to be having a look at Darklord and Despia, a really cool deck that I've been sort of working on for a while. It's been an awful lot of testing back and forth to sort of finally arrive at what I'm confident is one of the better ways of playing it. There hasn't been people seeing a lot of tournament success recently with this type of deck, so there's not exactly a lot of samples to look at. And the ones that we did look at after testing turned out not to be the greatest. So we did an awful lot of testing, and this is sort of what we've eventually settled at. So how does the deck work? Basically, it's very simple. You have your everything in the deck's a Dark Fairy, which is important because that's what plays into the Darklord engine, and more specifically using the first Darklord. So basically, as long as it's face up, your fairies cannot be targeted. Your any fairy monster, which is important because that's things like your Dramaturge, that's your Darklords themselves. He himself can't be targeted. And obviously with 4,000 attack, he's huge. So really strong, and then you can pay 1,000 life points to resurrect one of your fairy monsters from the graveyard. So the deck basically works on a bit of a cyclical structure. You have the Despia package, which, you know, your free Aliber to get searching, your double tragedy to get searching, we run 3 of the field spell purely because you always want to see the field spell. I would rather not have to rely on opening a branded opening or Aliber to get it. It's very important that you have the field spell. So running 3 of it, I would say, is smart. You could even run terraforming if you wanted to, but that's maybe a bit overkill. 3 branded opening to special summon the Aliber to get searching. Branded in red, which if you open up the field spell, the card you would search then off your Aliber is branded in red. Which allows you to fusion summon using a monster from the graveyard, basically, which is really strong. We have our 3 Darklord trap cards. Pop a card, negate a monster, and fusion summon. So they're really powerful trap cards. You'll be searching those and cycling them to the graveyard, and then activating them from the graveyard using the effects of your Darklords, which will pay 1,000 life to return a Darklord spell or trap back to the deck to use that card's effects. So in terms of how we make the Darklords consistent, we have triple Xgel. Xgel will discard herself and another Darklord card of any description to draw 2. So that's usually how you'll be getting your traps into the graveyard. You also have Banishment, which will let you search for any Darklord card, and Contact, which will resurrect the Darklord from the graveyard. But other than that, how the deck works in is very simple. We're running Super Poly because Super Poly is amazing right now. I would highly recommend lots of people playing it. The only matchup it's not that great in is Sword Souls, but you'll see in the gameplay there's still a lot of practical usage of it in that matchup. But everything else basically is just to add consistency to that package. You've also got Dramaturge. Dramaturge is amazing. It's basically a free summon every single turn whenever you use it for a fusion, and it is it's a 3k beater, and it can negate an extra deck summon, which is phenomenal. So if they try to go into Verte Anaconda, anything like that, they just get negated, which is great. But yeah, the deck is very sort of simple. It's very cyclical, and it is sort of pretty straightforward. So we'll not bore too much here with the details. We'll just get into the gameplay, and you'll see more sort of how the chemistry between the 2 deck types and 2 archetypes work, because there is an awful lot of chemistry between them. And then we'll make our assessments then towards the end of the video when we revisit the deck list. Alright, so game number 1, here we are. We're going first, so we're going to open up with Xgel here. So Xgel is going to discard it and a Darklord card to draw 2. We draw into Allure of Darkness, which is another draw 2. And we get to banish a Dark Monster, which is going to be the Tragedy, which is going to search for the Aliber. So a lot of card advantage right off the bat. We're going to use Banishment to search for Contact. Contact is basically a monster reborn for Darklords. It's going to resummon from the graveyard any of our Darklords. Now, the big Darklords have a stipulation where they can only be special summoned once per turn, so you do need to be aware of that. So we're going to special summon Xgel, then we'll normal the Aliber to grab a branded opening. We're going to use Xgel's effect to return the Banishment back to the deck to grab Darklord Rebellion. So we're going to set 3 then, and we're going to pass. We don't want to do anything else with that max C live, so we're just going to hold our horses and wait. At the beginning of his turn, we're going to use our branded opening to grab our Dramaturge. We're going to use then Xgel to pay 1,000 life to return Contact to resummon the Nurgle that we sent earlier on, so that's grand. He's going to go into the Monk of the Tinyu, so we're up against Sword Souls here from the looks of it. So he's going to now use Vishuddha to return the Dramaturge back to the deck. The Adhara is going to add the Vishuddha back to hand, so he can then resummon the Vishuddha because he still doesn't have any effect monsters. So that's grand. He'll special summon the Ecclesia. Ecclesia will sacrifice herself for Mo Yi. Mo Yi will activate. And we're going to time this here. So he's going to summon out the Sword Soul token. Then we're going to flip Rebellion. We're going to discard the Indulged Darklord to pop the token. Then use Nergal to return Rebellion to pop again. So that's a double pop there off that one card. So that's grand. He's going to go into then Long Huan. He's going to use the token of the Long Huan to summon out the Grand Master with the Mo Yi that was already on the field. So here we are, pretty standard plays. The Mo Yi will get drawing. The Grand Master is going to let him search for a blackout. So that's good. So he's going to use a Shuna now. He's going to banish it to resummon an Adhara from the deck. Adhara is going to summon out Baxia, Brightness of the Yang Zing. So we're going to chain to that then Super Polymerization. We're going to fuse together. Obviously, this is where Super Poly is not great against Sword Souls, but you can still fuse your own monsters. So we're going to fuse all of our targets into the first Darklord, which now officially means that all of my fairies cannot be targeted. So he's going to pop his own card. He's going to bring back the Adhara. He's going to go into Yazi. But again, he can't target the first Darklord, so he can't pop it. So moving into our turn then, we're going to pay 1,000 life here with the first Darklord to resummon a fairy from the graveyard. He's going to try to negate, but we can't be targeted. So he ends up negating his own Yazi. So the first Darklord then will resummon Aliber. Aliber is going to grab the Despian Theater from the deck. Theater is going to fuse together the Dramaturge and the Aliber for Quiritis. So that's going to trigger a few things. Dramaturge here is going to resummon itself. He's going to try and jump the gun here with the Blackout. Then Quiritis is going to reduce his entire field to 0 before the Dramaturge comes out. So we're going to get reducing. Blackout would destroy, but we have Branded Opening in the graveyard. We banish it to protect our Quiritis. Our field spell's gone, but that's okay because we have more than lethal on board. Our 4k, 3k, 2500. So there you go, playing through sort of one of the, again, I keep saying this every time we face Sword Souls, one of the best decks in the game. And the first Darklord makes it very, very difficult for Sword Souls to play against you going second. There's a lot of their removal, it's all targeting. Their Blackout targets, Baxia targets, Grandmaster targets, even the pop on Baron de Fleur targets. The only real out they may have to it would be potentially the Supreme Sovereign. I'm not sure if he just decided not to go into that, but that would be realistically the only out they would have. And you yourself would have ways to out that down on the follow-up, so that's completely fine. Sword Souls does struggle an awful lot against this deck. It does show the power of it, the consistency, and that the double pop off the Rebellion. So with your spells and traps, with a Darklord on the field, it basically means any spell or trap you activate, with your Darklord ones anyway, you get to use twice for basically the price of one. So Rebellion is pop 2, Sanctified is negate 2. You wouldn't really double Uprise, but that's the point. So double search off of Banishment, double revive off of Contact, double pop off Rebellion, double negate off of Sanctified. It's so powerful. And then the consistency then of the Despia engine of being able to facilitate those fusion summons, putting a Dramaturge on board, putting Quiritis on board, putting Masquerade on board, it just adds so much power then to the already consistent engine of Darklords. So that's a really good showing for game number 1 against Sword Souls then. Let's dive into a second game. Okay, game number 2. Again, we're going first, which is good. We're going to open up with Ixchel to discard herself and a Darklord to draw 2. We're going to set all our cards, then a Lure just in case. We end up drawing into an Aliber, which we'll banish. Second Allure, we're going to banish our Nurgle. We didn't really want to banish a Darklord off of that. We didn't open up the greatest of hands, but it's fine. We have more than enough to get going. We'll use Banishment to search for Rebellion. Contact is going to resummon the Ixchel from the graveyard, and then Ixchel is going to copy the Contact again to grab Tez. Tez then is going to activate the pay 1,000 to copy the Banishment to grab Sanctified. And suddenly this field is looking really strong. So now we're going to use the Theater of the Branded, fuse all 3 into the first Darklord. So Ad Libitum is going to resummon then the Aliber that we banished earlier on. So Aliber is going to grab Branded Opening. The first Darklord is going to pay 1,000 to revive the Ad Libitum. Branded Opening is going to summon the Dramaturge then, so we're setting ourselves up for like a follow-up fusion turn. We're going to get boosting. I didn't realize at the time that it also boosted your opponent's monsters, but that's not too big of a concern. You're looking at a 5,200 attack first Darklord that can't be targeted. Pot of Extravagance comes out here. We're going to chain onto the Pot of Extravagance the summon of Ixchel from the first Darklord's effect. You're going to try and swing into XGL, so we're going to send it to the graveyard to get popping. Then he sets 5 and passes, so delightful. Let's play through 5 back row. So we're going to open up with Contact. We're going to summon the XGL first of all. Then he's going to use Torrential Tribute. So we're going to chain to that XGL's effect to return the Rebellion back to deck in order to pop a card. Then we're going to use Sanctified Darklord. We're going to activate it. We were going to send XGL to negate the effect of our Dramaturge or our first Darklord, because you also gain life points equal to its attack points. So we were just doing it to heal, but honestly him paying 4,000 to negate it is just as good, if not better. So that's fine. Torrential Tribute wipes everything but the field spell. Because the Dramaturge and everything was sent to the grave, it allows us to revive a fusion monster, so the first Darklord comes back out. The first Darklord pay 1,000 to revive Tez. The opponent realizes that at that stage it's all over. We've got the recursion then of all the cards in the graveyard. We'll just constantly be summoning back. So there wasn't really very much then he could do from that point on. So that was a matchup there against very, very heavy back row. So while the deck doesn't have any built-in back row removal, I mean, it sort of does in the form of Rebellion. Rebellion's very good at just sniping back row. But other than that, just play through it. It's as simple as that sometimes. Like, because they can't target you, there's so many powerful back row cards that don't affect you that normally would. So you're realistically just dealing with sort of fallout from that. And most of the time, cards like the Theater, cards like Dramaturge, and even your Darklords being able to snipe and protect, all of that really does help you play through back row an awful lot. So don't be intimidated when you see them set 5 and pass, because you can play through it. You can almost always play through it. So again, very, very solid showing, very quick showing there. So let's move on then to game number 3 and we'll get a better glimpse at the deck then. Alright, game number 3. This one's a bit of a longer one. We are going first again. We did get a little bit lucky when it came to our turn preference, to be honest, across this little stint. But I mean, again, the deck can go first or second. It doesn't really matter. So we're going to summon out our Despia monsters here. We'll fuse the Tragedy and I believe it was a Ad Libitum, yep, to go into Masquerade Dragon. So we just want to get that chip damage going on our opponent over time. So Tragedy is going to search our deck for Dramaturge. Dramaturge is excellent. I love that card. Ad Libitum is going to resummon the Tragedy. Then we're going to set Branded in Red. We don't want to use it on this turn, because if we use it on our opponent's turn, we can resummon the Ad Libitum. Then we can fuse the 3 monsters together and reactivate the effects of Tragedy and Ad Libitum. So we wanted to make sure we were properly cycling through all of our available effects. So all 3 of them will activate. And then we still get our first Darklord, which protects our fairies. So Tragedy will search for Aliber. Ad Libitum will resummon the Tragedy, and Dramaturge will resummon itself. So we have a fairly decent field here with a lot of protection. None of our fairies can be targeted, and the Masquerade Dragon is going to be taking 600 life from him every time he uses a card. We have another person setting 4 back row and passing, so we're going to draw here. We're just going to go straight into battle. I thought it was going to be as easy as just swinging, but no, he uses Dimension Wall, so we take 4k to the face. He goes for the Ring of Destruction when that doesn't work, because we have Branded Opening in the graveyard. Again, pays another 600 to use Lord of the Heavenly Prison from his hand. Because he didn't reveal it during his main phase, he didn't get to set a card from his deck, so that was a bit of a misplay from our opponent. So we're going to fusion summon here into Quiritis. We're going to add another Aliber to hand. We'll use Allure of Darkness, and banish an Aliber then off the back of that. We use X-Gel, discard herself in a trap. Then we rip into Banishment, which is fantastic. So we're going to use Banishment to grab Rebellion. Going to set Rebellion, use the first Darklord to pay 1,000 and resurrect the X-Gel. X-Gel is going to return Banishment to the deck to grab Uprising. Uprising is really good because if you fusion summon using your into the first Darklord using Morningstar, you get to nuke your opponent's board. So we're going to use our 2 level 8s there to go into the Hope Harbinger Dragon, which is another play, because you're playing so many level 8s, you can also do an awful lot of Exceed Summoning too. So we're going to use Sanctify just to gain a bunch of life points. We're going to use our Rebellion to pop a card, then we're going to use Uprising. Going to send to the graveyard the X-Gel as cost. He's going to max C, but we don't care. We're fusing together these 2 for the Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. The Starving Venom Fusion Dragon is going to gain 3,000 attack here. Dramaturge is going to resummon itself to the field. And we're just setting up our graveyard here, just in case he tries to do anything funny here. We want to be able to retaliate by destroying him and his board. So that's fine. He ends up crashing into the Hope Harbinger Dragon. Starving Venom goes down, but again, remember, if our Dramaturge or anything like that is sent to the graveyard by our opponent, the first Darklord comes back. We're just setting ourselves up here. We're going to banish the Tragedy to grab a Branded in red from the graveyard, but we actually get Gammed. So the Gamma, unfortunately, he had the Cypher Driver in hand too, so that's a bit unfortunate for our opponent. We're going to normal summon Aliber. Aliber's going to grab Branded Opening, and then the Despian Fader is going to fuse again into the first Darklord. Worked the semantics out on that one. Then Dramaturge is going to come on back. First Darklord is going to revive Ixchel. This is why we didn't mind fusing away the other one, because again, very, very easily summonable. We went to pop the back row, but I forgot about the Lord of Heavenly Prisons. Honestly, again, small misplay. He tries to go for that Ring of Destruction again, but we have another Branded Opening, so it doesn't work. We're protecting our dragons here, because the dragons can still be targeted. It's only your fairies that are protected. So it is something you need to be aware of. But the Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, again, if it's destroyed, we're going to be able to nuke their board. So he's going to go in here into a second Lord of the Heavenly Prisons. Thank God he's not playing the Train OTK. So that's going to resummon in. So whenever our monster is destroyed, we're going to resummon the Despian Quirites back out to the field. This is going to give us the chance to basically reduce his whole board to 0. I believe we're just going to do that right away. Yep, absolutely. We want to push for lethal damage here. So we go to swing into his monster, and this is a really interesting interaction. So if you read this card, Blazing Mirror Force, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, destroy as many attack position monsters that your opponent controls as possible, so non-targeting destruction, and we both take damage equal to the attack of those destroyed monsters. So our opponent here, if you add all of this up, this is over 6k damage. So our opponent here, he's going for a tie. He's decided as long as he doesn't lose, he's fine. So he's aiming to end this in a tie with that Blazing Mirror Force. Unfortunately, our opponent hasn't properly read his card. The way it works is I only take the damage if he takes the damage, and he wasn't able to without losing. So we actually, that turns into a win. Our opponent's bid for a draw there didn't quite work. Again, wasn't exactly showing of a super competitive deck, although the sort of heavy back row with Lord of Heavenly Prisons seems to be on the rise, and it's a very interesting strategy. It seems very fun. I might give it a go at some point. But yeah, 100%. So that's another display of the deck being able to play through an awful lot of back row. It's also potentially an advocation for that Blazing Mirror Force. Blazing Mirror Force seems pretty good. So that's fine. It also does show the weakness to non-targeting removal. So non-targeting removal still hits you pretty hard, but again, the Theater tends to help you recover from that sort of thing quite easily. So what we're going to do then is we'll move into one last game that didn't quite go quite as well for us, and we're going to see one of the weaknesses of the deck then, just to finish it all off. Alright, into the fourth game we go. So we're going second here, which normally isn't the problem, but if you look at our hand, we don't have any monsters, which isn't super common, but it does happen on occasion. We do play a lot of spells and traps. We do have some draw power there with the Allure. We have no interaction with our opponent. What you'll notice is this deck doesn't play any hand traps, which is, I suppose, one of its weaknesses almost. So our opponent's setting up here a board here. He's obviously playing Tri-Brigades. So he sets up his DPE, his Ancient Warrior, so he gets to return a card on the field back to our hand. He gets to pop one on our field. We draw a second Allure, so we're just gonna have to commit. We set everything except the trap cards, because we don't mind the trap cards being sent to the graveyard, so that's fine. He's gonna use his Phoenix Enforcer to pop a random back row. He just hits one of our contacts, which is really good. We rip into Tragedy. Feel like we're playing Thunder Dragons all over again, ripping into a Roar. Tragedies is the best thing you can possibly pull into off of an Allure, because you can banish it to basically search for another card. So it removes the -1 cost then of the Allure. We'll normal summon the Aliber. He's going to use his Ancient Warriors to return it to hand, which is interesting. We still get our search though, so we grab our Theater of the Branded. We activate Theater of the Branded. We're going to fusion summon using these guys to go into Despia and Quirites. So we wanted to put the Nergal in Grave so we can revive it off contact. We reduced them to 0 first because we don't want to reduce our own Nergal. Then we're going to activate Allure of Darkness. Unfortunately, we drew into a Dark Monster. We really didn't want that, but we get the banishment too. We grab another X Gel. We're going to activate its effect to discard itself in a trap. The reason we didn't want to draw a Dark Monster is we wanted those trap cards engraved to use with the effect of Nurgle. So Contact's going to revive the X Gel. We're going to swing into the Ancient Warriors, and we're going to pass. X Gel, then pay 1,000 life to search one last time off the banishment, and we'll end our turn here. So now we have a double pop off the Rebellion, and we also have a fusion summon in on our opponent's turn. And we have, with the Morningstar in hand, we also basically get the option for that to be a Raigeki on our opponent's board too. So we're going to use X-Gel's Contact to resummon their Gall. Rebellion's going to pop the back row. He's going to activate Tenki here, which is going to grab Zodiac Ferroblade. He's going to use the Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, so in chain to that, we're going to use our Sanctified Darklord in the graveyard, but he has Droplet. And Droplet is obviously an extremely powerful card. He's going to negate our Nurgle and our Coritis, which is unfortunate. His DPE is going to go through, it's going to destroy our back row. The Uprising, which again is very, very unfortunate. That does leave us extremely vulnerable here. We have 4,000 life, we have a weakened Coritis on the field. Luckily our Darklords are in defense, and they're pretty big in their defense too, so they'll not be easily overcome. He's going to use Karas here. He's just going into a Link 3, so he's going to bring out the Rugal. Rugal plus our Karas is going to summon Access Code Talker. This guy's just going for lethal. He saw the opportunity. We chain Coritis just out of desperation at this point. I sort of saw here with the opponent that this was game over, but we weren't going to deny him his win. He reduces us even further with Rugal's effect. He banishes one to pop, banishes a second to pop our other Darklord, summons the Ferroblade to go into Borboof, just in case, I suppose, something went wrong. He uses Celestial then to draw 2. Then he swings, and that's game. So that's 4,500 into 4k life. Unfortunate. So what went wrong there? The Droplet really did hurt us an awful lot. So in terms of some of the weaknesses of the deck, it doesn't play any hand traps, and we'll revisit the list in a second to substantiate that. It doesn't play any hand traps, so if you go second, you're limited in the interaction you can have with your opponent. That could mean something like Dark Ruler No More would be very good in the deck. I don't think it has a room to play like a 9-card hand trap engine. That just wouldn't work. So potentially Dark Ruler No More, Maxi maybe, things like that would help it go second. It does have the ability to play through a lot of interruption. As you saw, they were able to, destroy and return and things like that, and we were able to play through it quite well. It's just that Droplet really, really got us. So the deck's not invincible, of course not. If it was, you'd be seeing it on the tier list, and it's not there at the minute. So it is a very, very strong deck. It will definitely compete with and destroy a lot of decks you go up against, especially on the ladder. But it does have its weaknesses, so don't go around thinking it's invincible. But that's fine. That'll do us for game number 4. We're going to pay one last revisit to the deck list. I'm going to cover off a couple of the other ideas that we tried for the deck that maybe you want to give a try yourself, and we'll go from there then. So let's move into the deck profile. Okay, so here we are revisiting the deck here. Now, the gameplay there probably showed you an awful lot more about how it works than the initial description did. Being able to, double activate all of your Darklord spells and traps is huge. Banishment adds a lot of consistency. Allure adds consistency. Aliber adds consistency. Tragedy adds consistency. So the deck itself it's extremely strong. It's extremely consistent, which is the biggest thing in the current metagame. You want a deck to do what it's meant to do every time. Now, can you improve this deck? Absolutely. It does have a little bit of difficulty going second. Super Poly helps with that, but you only run 2 and you don't always have access to it. So you may want to consider running something like Dark Ruler No More. Would help an awful lot. You can probably cut like the Indulged Darklord out and maybe bring Uka back down to 1 to go for some Dark Ruler No More. Maybe bring Theater down to 2. Maybe bring Allure down to 2. I think everything else here you can push to have Tragedy at 1. But I think pretty much everything else here is core. I mean, you can also take out Morningstar. But everything else here, I would say this is the core of the deck, honestly. And it is quite a large core. So it doesn't leave a lot of room for hand traps. Doesn't leave a lot of room for other sort of interruptions and such. But if you really, really wanted to run some, you could. You would run like Nibiru, Maxi, Ash Blossom, whatever it is you want to run. There are a lot of options, but the core of the deck is quite large, so you're gonna have difficulties fitting lots of things in there. In terms of the other ideas we were testing whenever we were making the deck, one of the big ones was a combo heavy, like a combo heavy variant using reasoning. I just found reasoning to be far too inconsistent. Honestly, it just, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Sometimes you just milled a bunch of cards that you didn't want to mill. For example, your theater, your super polys, things like that. You can always add branded and red back using tragedy, so it was fine. It does generate, when it works, it generates a lot of advantage, like being able to put all of your Darklord cards in graveyard, putting your branded opening in the graveyard, putting your Darklord monsters in the graveyard to then be resurrected off of contact, things like that is incredible. So it holds a lot of power, so I would recommend testing it out, just seeing if you like it or not. It wasn't really up my alley. I preferred a more consistent approach, but 100% reasoning is definitely an option. So past that, you can sort of fill in the blanks however you want. The core, as I said, is pretty much this. If you're playing something that looks like this, again, you don't really even need Super Poly, but if you're playing something like this, you're going to be doing quite well. You're going to be playing the deck well. In terms of the extra deck, we're playing some Super Poly targets. Dragostapelia helps counter the TPE, as I've said in the last couple of videos. Quiritis reduces their whole field to 0. It's very easily summoned, and if it leaves the field, you can special summon a Despia monster from the deck. So if you don't have Dramaturge, you can grab it. If you can grab another Alibur to get searching. Masquerade Dragon deals damage over time and can re-summon itself, so this is quite good at creating materials for your rank 8 Exceed summons. So that's really good. We never summon this guy. I can see the value in having him, having a light and a dark monster. It is another very powerful Super Poly target if you can set your field up right, but I didn't summon him at any stage, so you don't have to play this. You can cut it if you want, maybe for another number 97 target. It's up to you. The first Darklord. You don't need 2, but I think 2 is very good. There were a couple of games, even in one of the games we displayed, where I did go into a second one. You don't need more than 2, but I think 2 is very strong. Protects all your fairies from being targeted, resurrects your pay 1,000 life to resurrect a fairy every turn, and if you use Darklord Morningstar in his summon, you can destroy everything. So that's really good. So that's especially powerful with the Uprising trap card. If you can use this to fusion summon into him on their turn using Morningstar, then you wipe out their whole board, including their back row. So that's super strong. It's not very consistent to resolve, but again, if you can make it work, by all means, go for it. Then we have our Exceed summons here, which are just filler, really. The Hope Harbinger, we summoned this once, and then these cards we never actually used. They weren't applicable. The Condemned Darklord, again, I haven't actually used this card, but it is really strong. It basically just adds a lot of consistency for it. Discard a card, add a Darklord from deck to hand, gain a bunch of life points, and it more readily helps you go into Morningstar. So you're able to banish monsters from your graveyard as tributes instead of actually tributing them on the field. That would really only come up with Morningstar since he can't be special summoned. But again, I wouldn't describe it as necessary, but it's only an SR. I would definitely recommend putting it in. Verte Anaconda is literally just here for Super Poly. I never used it. Unicorn and Access Code Talker, never used them. They're here just in case, basically, because there were times where you had a whole bunch of monsters on board. It's just I would normally prefer to use them as fusion material. If I had to go into link plays, the option is there, and that's why they're here, because it is possible to do. And Access Code Talker is just such a broken card, as you saw in the last game where it beat us. That why wouldn't you? If you had the option to, if it was necessary, then it can win games by itself. So that would be silly not to include it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the general sort of breakdown of it. You can take it from there, add in things that you want, take out things you don't want. You can run some of the upper Darklord cards, maybe run Enchantment. Enchantment's decent, but I think it's a bit weak. And there's a whole bunch of other Darklords you can consider. The Indulged Darklord's kind of good at, because it searches a Darklord, adds one to your hand, summons one to your opponent's field, so you can put one in grave by destroying that one and have one in hand, so that's great too. But yeah, I've rambled on long enough. it is a bit of a longer profile because the deck is highly customizable, but it is so cool, so strong, and it's only going to get better over the coming months here once, you know, a lot more branded stuff comes out. So keep an eye on that as well. And yeah, that's all I really have to say on the matter then, so I'll see you all later.